What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Mi Casa es Su Casa. And today I have Garland Nixon with us. How you doing, Garland?
I am doing fantastic, Niko.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm glad to hear it. If you don't mind, go ahead and let the people know exactly what you do, what your show's called, and all that good stuff.
So I'm doing a number of things. Number one, for years, since 2006, I've been doing a show on Pacifica, the affiliate in Washington, D.C. That's WPFW 89.3 FM. And it's also WPFWFM.org every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, where I talk progressive politics. The last several months, I've been doing a show now, a morning show in D.C. It's 105.5 FM and 1390 AM. It's called Fault Lines with Nixon and Stranahan, and it's on. That's actually Sputnik, which is kind of the radio version of RT, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you all have a lot of fun. And in case you all don't know, the premise of the show is pretty much a conservative and a progressive who, weirdly enough, agree on almost everything.
We agree on a lot of things. So this guy's a Breitbart conservative, and you know me, I'm an independent. I was a Democrat, but I'm too far to the left of the Democratic Party. It didn't work for me, so I ended up.
It didn't work out. I had to move on.
But we find areas where we agree, and then there's a lot of areas where we disagree. But I think it's something the mainstream doesn't do. You know, they put people that agree on everything, and so I think it's a great dynamic. A lot of people enjoy the show.
Yeah, I mean, Garland and Lee actually had me on last week, and we had a great conversation. And like I said, I mean, I'm a progressive, you're a progressive, and you have a little bit more experience in politics than I do. He's been around a little bit longer. And Lee used to be a Democrat, and now he is Republican, or at least conservative. And almost everything we talked about, we agreed on. And
Right.
it's really showing, in my opinion, that dynamic of truth kind of persevering through everything now. Nobody really gives a damn about whether or not you're a Republican, Democrat, because Democrats are acting like Republicans. Now Republicans are acting, I don't know what the hell they're acting like sometimes. And then you got the Trump. And so it doesn't matter where you claim you fall if your actions and your words and decisions don't match up. And I think that in journalism, that's kind of persevering through all the BS that we've been seeing put out by mainstream.
We find that there's some fundamental issues that we disagree on. Certainly, you would know that with a conservative and a progressive, but they're not as many as you think. And the ones that we disagree on, there's no use beating ourselves to death over that. We'll find some others that we disagree. But it's the fault lines. The word fault lines says it gives us the opportunity for us to expose the fault lines and then expose the errors. So it's a lot of fun. I'll put it like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. You know, I did a show yesterday talking about how Jimmy Dore went on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan actually put out a call asking for any like popular progressive media outlets to message him so that they could go ahead and get him on, you know, listen to a different perspective and go on the show. And I thought that was awesome of him, because a lot of people, I mean, I've listened to Joe Rogan. He's pretty reasonable, actually. But a lot of people just peg him as right wing, and because his association or former association with Alex Jones, and he's not. And he had him on, and he was like, him and Jimmy, once again, like I would expect, agreed on mostly everything. And once again, it's like I said, there's some fundamental differences, but that doesn't mean that we want different outcomes ultimately. It simply means that we have different solutions and different paths to get there, which everything is situational. And some things they may be right about in one situation, others that progressives may be right about. But I think that the ultimate idea of unity, it should be just really harped on even more now than before, because, you know, we're getting into that season again, right? We're getting to that 2018 election, that 2020 election, and we need truth more so than party.
Right. A big part of it is this too, getting outside of what, you know, the mainstream media. And that is, you know, I learned a lot. I don't know about you. I learned a lot. You know, I tell people, you used to come into my house every day, and I would have on MSNBC from like 6 all the way through. And I'd have them on, and I thought they were telling me the truth. But I was wary, but I thought it was good stuff. When I was really woke up to who they were, it was during the primaries, when I'm like, okay, I'm supporting Bernie, the other people supporting Hillary, we're going to get, you know, some kind of fair coverage. And they kneecapped Bernie, and they were dishonest about it, and they were unified about it. And they worked, you know, there was an incestuous relationship between media, between the government, between the Clinton, you know, the Clinton, and it woke me up. I was like, well, wait a minute, what am I doing watching these people? This is all a game, and I'm not going to be a part of that game.
Yeah, I think they created a clear dichotomy of what they're really about. And before it was hard to see because if you were on the left side of the aisle, then pretty much everything that was going on in the news you just believed. You're like,
Right.
because as long as they don't say nothing bad about Obama, then we're good. If Obama agree with this, then we're all right. We're on the same team. And
Well,
then
the one thing we can do is we can thank Hillary Clinton because, you know, Hillary Clinton, her campaign exposed things to us that you couldn't have seen any other way, and
yeah.
exposed things to millennials that they could have never seen without the Clinton campaign, to give them that clear contrast between the old Cold War Democrats who is the home of the neocons. Most people don't know the neocons, the Richard Pearls, the Paul Wolfowitz. They worked for a guy named Henry Scoop Jackson, who was a Democrat. The neocons came from the Democratic Party, the Cold War Democrats. Those were the Clintons. And then we saw Bernie, who they call a democratic socialist, but he's actually a mainstreamer in Europe. So we saw what I would call an FDR New Deal Democrat versus, who wasn't perfect, but a New Deal Democrat versus, and I'll put it this way, a clear contrast with the old Scoop Jackson right-wing Cold War Democrats. And that woke a lot of people up because that contrast lets you see who's going to go with who. The media, all of these other people, establishments, Hollywood, you name it, they all grabbed onto that Cold War Wall Street Democrat and said, this is our girl. And they did everything they could to make that happen.
To the point, and it also, I think, proves one thing too, because at one point, I would say that when you're first getting involved in politics, the type of corruption that we see seems insurmountable, I would say, because you're like, it's such a well-connected network. And then you find out really fast, if you've been paying attention, these people aren't as smart as you would think they are. You find out that you don't have to be very intelligent to get to a higher level in political office or get a certain position in the media. You just have to be willing to play ball and be corrupt.
Yeah, what they are is two things. Well, mainly, what they are is arrogant. What they are, it's kind of like the Hillary Clinton campaign is the perfect kind of metaphor for the elitist, because basically here's the way they look at it. We own everything. We own the messaging. We own the newspapers. We own it all. You know, they're the Borg. Resistance is futile. So they're so arrogant because they believe there's nothing that anybody can do to stop us. So we can do whatever we want to.
Yep. They really, that was, and exactly. And their arrogance is really, they're going to end up being their downfall. And it already has led to that. I mean, think about it, like with the Russiagate situation, whenever the FBI informant came out and said that the oligarchs that he was working with in Russia were so confident that Hillary Clinton was going to get that administration to push and get the Uranium One deal finalized, that they had already started building in the Canada and the United States, started building facilities. And so it makes you like, wow, like these people just in their heart and soul knew they had everything in the back, and that Hillary Clinton was going to become president, and that there was nothing that anyone could do to stop it.
Right. And even look at what Hillary Clinton did in 2014 when the Clinton State Department fomented a coup in Ukraine. They fomented a coup. I mean, even that, if you look at that, even that was part of the Clinton campaign. So overthrow the government of Ukraine. They install the government. They install the people that they want. And then
we try to pretend that we had a political interest in the Ukraine, and when that was a lie.
They worked with the government in Ukraine to help them to get information against the Trump campaign. So they install this government, and most people don't know this. They install the government in Ukraine. The FBI puts a contingent in the Ukraine to work with the Ukrainian government. Most people don't know that. The FBI is supposed to be domestic law enforcement. The CIA is supposed to be working foreign. The FBI puts a contingent in Ukraine to work with the Ukrainian government. They're the ones who came up with the initial information on Paul Manafort when they got him running the Trump campaign. Now, I'm not a Trump fan. I oppose everything that Trump stands for. But the fact of the matter is, that doesn't mean that I have to turn my back on the corruption of the Clinton campaign.
Exactly. I feel the exact same way. I'm not one of those people who are naive enough or trying to profit off of the Trump MAGA fever. But I can acknowledge Trump's corruption, and really, I can acknowledge it, but I don't have to harp on it because there are enough people who do that literally every single day. However, on the other side of that fence, it's the total opposite. For the people, well, we don't have to worry about them because they're not in office. We do have to worry about them because they still have their influence in the party. Anybody who's ever been involved in politics know power doesn't come from holding an office.
Well,
You know,
here's what kills me now, and I know it's something that that you spoke about, and that is we've got the Democratic Party is now the guard dog of the deep state. Now the Democratic Party is like, oh, the CIA, how dare you attack the CIA? How dare you attack the FBI? The same FBI that had the COINTELPRO operation against black civil rights leaders in the 60s. That even right now, after Black Lives Matters people, and they're calling it a black identity movement. So you got all these people now claiming to be the left, saying the FBI is our buddy. And now they're like, oh, we can count on Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller, the same Robert Mueller that was the FBI chief under the Bush administration. That's where your faith is. Excuse me.
And friends with James Comey, and still friends with the CEO of CrowdStrike.
Well, and James Comey, what did he do before he was the FBI director? He was on the board of directors of HSBC Bank. What happened to HSBC Bank? They were fined almost $2 billion for laundering money for the Mexican drug cartels. He was on the.
And that's for those of you who don't know, that's Hong Kong Shanghai. HSBC stands for Hong Kong Shanghai. I don't know what the B stands for, but essentially it's out of China, and they changed their name so that nobody would question where they were coming from.
It's the crookedest bank in the world. He was on the board of directors in it, and he was the vice president of Lockheed Martin. And they think that—
I didn't know that.
Yes, look it up. He was the vice president of Lockheed Martin. These people are the problem, and we've got a bunch of people in the Democratic Party who think the problem is going to give them the solution.
Yeah, exactly. And another good example of how really deeply corrupt our institutions could have been if Hillary Clinton would have won, which I thought was the biggest battle that we need to win. I didn't give a damn about Trump. Hell, at a certain point, which I feel like really anybody should be doing, I didn't even give a damn about civil rights as far as being a black man at a certain point, because the idea that our institutions could not hold individuals accountable was one of the scariest things. And we've seen the result of that when the Supreme Court would not uphold basic common sense laws. Like nothing gets taken care of if we don't have the security of our institutions. And so if Hillary Clinton would have won, the Supreme Court would have been hers. Right. And in the worst way, because it either would have been a neoliberal that she put up there who was pro-corporation, two of them, or and people somehow think that if say, for example, she won, that she would put in somebody from the left because she was going to push TPP. She made that very clear. And then negotiate with the Republicans, because remember, the Republicans and the Democrats are split down the middle on TPP. She knows she can get the Republicans to join her side if they gave her a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, she was definitely going to pull a Bill Clinton on us. There's no question in it, because Bill Clinton passed NAFTA, which Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. couldn't get through, and Bill Clinton passed that with a majority of Republican votes because he couldn't get enough Democrats to pass it.
Exactly.
So we were going to get the same thing from.
And then it would have been even worse because we would have ended up with one centrist, one Republican, and they both would have did exactly what they told, because that would have been contingent. Their selection would have been contingent on make sure that my people can walk.
And ultimately, the other part of it is this. Trump, what they're teaching, what they're telling us, what they're telling the mindless out there is Trump is the problem. If only we could get rid of Trump, well, then we'd have Mike Pence and we'd have it made. He's a paragon of virtue.
Yeah, that's exactly why I won next.
Trump is not the problem. Trump is what the problem creates. Trump is an avatar of the problem. If you look at Trump, so if we didn't get Trump, if Hillary Clinton got in there, in 2020, we'd have got something worse. Because let's not forget, who were the two people in the Republican Party who were behind Trump? Ted Cruz, and Ben Carson.
Yep.
So the fact of the matter is, you don't get Trump, you get 4 years of this neoliberal neocon. God knows if there would be anything left of us, if we would be a thermonuclear pile of ash after 4 years of Hillary Clinton. But in the unlikely event that we survive, then we really would get a maniac. At least we've got an incompetent,
a well-spoken maniac. Yeah, a well-spoken. Especially Ted Cruz is particularly dangerous.
Oh yes.
I mean, the guy. Funny story. Ted Cruz used to be in my old college debate league.
Mm-hmm.
And before after used to be his American Parliamentary Debate Association, he went to Harvard, and it was very conservative then.
Mm-hmm.
And the dude was a prick.
Yeah.
I mean, he made racist arguments, and nobody questioned because there were literally no minorities back.
Right.
And I mean, Cruz is kind of a minority, but he's Cuban, so you know how that goes. So when you have those tools to be able to persuade people and pretty much convince the crowd using empty moral platitudes and nonsensical arguments, but you make it sound so good. I mean, you've seen his town halls.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Like,
and even now, what we're looking at is a party who's they're feeling us out to see if they can steal it again in 2020, because they're like, well, what about Kamala Harris? What about Cory Booker? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why are you raising those? Even giving those names? Why don't you just say in 2020 we're going to have a free, transparent, and honest a primary, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Cory Gardner, anybody who wants to can put in, and whoever's going to win will win. But it's like they're already floating names. Why would you float names if you were going to have an honest primary and allow the voters to choose? You're simply saying, we're going to choose somebody before the primaries even starts. We want to put some names to see which one you would accept in an undemocratic situation. So they are heading down the same path of destruction that they headed down.
They're becoming more methodical with it, because even Howard Dean comes out and a few other top operatives come out and say, oh, and we want somebody young. You know, Bernie Sanders was good and he galvanized the party, but we want somebody young. And they keep saying that because they want to make everybody believe that it's about his age. And for me personally, I don't give a damn if you're 85, if you're healthy and you're able to run and you're a progressive, we can figure that shit out. You know?
It is.
I don't give a damn if there might be a 25-year-old somewhere right now who can run the country better than a 35-year-old president. And I would be okay with that.
And add this to Howard Dean. What do we care what you want? You want somebody old or young. If we in a democracy, I don't think you or the party elders are supposed to choose, Howard Dean. You're giving us a window into how you people see this thing, how the elites. We need a person this age or that age, or a woman or not a woman. In a democratic system, you simply put out look, the Republicans had 19 people. So I don't care if you have 21, put them out and let the voters choose. But they're already telling us how they see it. Well, we're thinking about this group, or maybe the age, or maybe the young. Well, that means that you don't care what I'm thinking. That's why I'm not a Democrat anymore.
It's crazy because people don't even see it as this, but it is a subtle form of any type of ism you can think of: ageism, sexism, racism. Because what you're doing is you're propping up, for example, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. You're propping them up because they're black and they're light skinned, and you're using a specific target to target a specific group for personal gain and political agendas. They're not actually going to do anything. In fact, you're probably going to use them to disenfranchise your voters. And specifically, you're using them to disenfranchise black voters and convince them that, we're on your side. Look, we have another light skin in office. Go vote for him at the 99 percentile level. Like, it's almost worse in a lot of ways than what the Republicans.
Like this. We're going to give you a Wall Street funded neocon puppet. What package do you want them in? Do you want them short? Do you want them female, black, white, green, gray, or grizzly? How would
Build
you
a Democrat? Build a Democrat
neocon this time? Well, without saying, well, maybe we don't want a Wall Street puppet neocon. Oh, well, that's not an option we're willing to present to you.
Yeah, we don't got that in the store. We ain't got that.
Looking around on the shelves, we don't have any. So here's a list of Wall Street puppet neocons. It's like going to a car dealer and they say, well, we've got Honda Accords. We got them in green, blue, red, black. Yeah, well, maybe I don't want a Honda Accord. That's all we got, dude. You got to pick.
It's a car dealership though, right? Yeah. All y'all got is Honda Accords. Yep. Well, it depends who's asking for it. If you want me to, I can make it look like a Civic, but it won't actually be a Civic. It's still gonna be a Honda Accord. So the funny thing with Kamala, and they always use these. Once again, you've been around a lot longer than I have, so when they start saying things like rising star, and of course it was like buzzwords, and I start saying things. And the first thing I think of, once again, and it could be by virtue of coming into the political game at such a, you know, young age and at a critical, pivotal point, I hear Rising Star, I'm like, oh, wow, they must have a pretty extensive record doing something good for somebody somewhere. Like that would be what qualifies somebody as a rising star, I would assume. You go look at Kamala Harris record, like, hold up. Nobody even knew who she was until like 6 months ago.
Right.
And you're a rising star.
She's a rising star because they call her a rising star.
Yeah, and she's a rising star amongst the elites.
Well,
she's been playing ball with the elites for a while.
That's it. Exactly. She was the person that refused to go after Steve Mnuchin's bank, One West, when they were up to no good in her area and out in California. So I guess she's been vetted as far as they're concerned. The way they vet you is like, okay, are you willing to go along with the financial Wall Street elite? Are you willing to go along with the neocons? Yeah, well, then you're a rising star in our book. Next rising star, please.
Yep, and every time they get knocked off the horse, next one up, and now I swear they're cycling right now between Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and Kamala Harris. They're like, they don't know who to pick because nobody knows who the hell Kamala Harris is. And I'm sorry, a black woman who no one knows, especially when they find out your record, you're not going to win. Like, and that's just the reality. Nina has galvanized a huge section of the progressive wing and the independent wing. She would actually stand a chance to win because everybody would do everything in their power to make sure that she.
The problem is, here's the problem, and this is, I guess I'm feeling, here's the hopelessness of Garland. I don't feel that she would have a chance to win for this reason. In the same way that I don't think Bernie, I'll put it like this, that I don't think Bernie should run as a Democrat in 2020 if he's going to run. That I almost feel like if you're a progressive, maybe you shouldn't run as a Democrat. Let me tell you why. Because we already know what the party does if you're a progressive and you run as a Democrat. We don't have to guess how that story ends. Yeah. We already know they're going to give you the Tanya Harding business and they're going to take a pipe to your kneecaps. So if you're a progressive and you run as a Democrat, they're going to rig the primaries, you're toast. So to me, if you're a progressive, you probably ought to run as an independent. Now, people may say you don't have a chance if you run as an independent. Here's what I'll say. Well, you sure don't have a chance if you run as a Democrat.
I think there's mostly truth to that. So I would say this is just as playing devil's advocate. So what happens if they oversaturate the Democratic primary, much like Trump took advantage of the oversaturation of the Republican primary? By the time they finally got down to the final voting, like he won about halfway through because they had beat the living shit out of each other, but there was like 10 Republican candidates and they almost all lasted until the final stage.
But if you look at the numbers, I was one of the people who all along said, ain't no way in the world that Hillary Clinton, what I said was if we nominate Hillary Clinton, Trump's president. And I kept saying, Trump is going to win. And why? Because if you really go back and look at the polls from the very beginning, Trump led all of them everywhere. It
wasn't a surprise.
From the very beginning, people were saying, do you think Marco Rubio can win? And I was like, he's 25 points back in his home state behind Trump.
People were trying to speak it into fruition. They were trying to speak. They were like, you think it's Marco Rubio's in front, right? And I'm like, no, y'all, it's Trump. Nah, he's not really going to win, though. Nah, he's not really going to win, though. I'm like, y'all, Trump is about to be the nominee, and if Bernie does not win, it's over.
It's over. Hillary was unelectable. So what happened? Trump didn't win because he was a Republican. He won because he ran as something else. Now, of course, we know he's just a con artist and it was all lies. But at the time, I actually, on my radio show in DC, I had a Republican call in and say, well, the reason I'm voting for Trump is the rest of them all lied to me and I feel like he's our last resort. And I said, well, first of all, if you think Trump's telling you the truth, you're in a world of trouble. I said, but I understand where you're coming from because Democrats feel the exact same way.
Right, but they're going to lie to you.
But the difference was the Republicans didn't have the mechanisms in the process to steal it. They didn't have the built-in.
That's another thing I would say. So that is.
They would have if they could have.
And I think the dynamics of the Republican Party are a little bit different because they're very alpha male driven. So. Yes. If they are, one thing you could say about the Republicans is that they're proficient in doing what it takes to win for the entire party. The Democrats are not. They're stupid. They're individualistic. They're agenda-driven, ambition-driven, and they're not about all the boats rising of the party at once. They're about who we can put in a certain position, and a lot of them, the people in the party, I would say, perceive power as holding an elected office, whereas Republicans understand that they need a mandate. And so all of those mechanisms, just from my investigations that were in place, were put in place mostly by Hillary Clinton and mostly by Bill Clinton. And so after they left, some of those mechanisms still exist. However, the only way that you were able to do a lot of what you were able to do was because of people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Howard Dean, members of the party, Donnie Brazil, the relationship between the party and the media, the party itself, and the administration. You have none of that anymore. And this is also in a time period where if they tried that, the acting president, Obama at the time, would not have, he did opposite of speaking on it, right? He tried to pretend like election fraud didn't exist for a while. I was a little pissed about that. Trump is not that. Once again, one of the few good things about having a Donald Trump is if he saw it, he would use that as a tool for 2020. Like, he would use it. He would be like, they're cheating. Look at them doing it again. Don't vote for them. And all the independents are like, I mean, he's an asshole, but shit, he's fucking right. And he's actually calling it out this time. And so it took 7 to 8 years for Hillary Clinton to build the infrastructure to be able to cheat Bernie Sanders, and she barely got away with it. I would like to see, like I said, I mostly agree with you. I feel like if anybody runs a Democrat at a national level, they're going to get beat. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the emails that have been sent out. Don't debate your friend, your fellow Democrat in the primary. Don't say anything bad about them. Don't say anything negative. And you are going to go on a unity tour if you lose. Oh, by the way, we've already selected the Democrat we're going to fund. We've already started funding them, and we've already endorsed them. But hey, you can't get any endorsements until the primary. Like, it's crazy. I'm like, now you're trying to rig it, and at least you're giving advance notice. Is that how we should feel?
There's a positive thing, and that is one of the things we're seeing is, there are a lot of people, lefties, who are challenging the mainstream. Some of them are winning. I think, I really believe that in 2018, 2020, here's the dynamic that I'm predicting. Watch the independents. And here's what I mean. An independent, most of your congressional districts, somebody wins by 5, 6, 8 points, right? People don't win by 20. You got some here that are really blue or really red where people, but most of them, they're close, fairly close, right? You inject an independent in. So an independent doesn't have to win, but what happens when an independent takes 10, 12 to 15 points? They upset the whole status quo, and you don't know what's going to happen or who's going to win. So when independents start running, and some of them will win in the primaries, but some of them will run as a libertarian or a green or just a pure independent. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see them snatching numbers from both sides or either sides that aren't normally, and you're going to see some weird things happen that upset the status quo that's going to freak them out, to the point where in 2020, you're going to see somebody running for president, and it was going to be like, say, Ross Perot in 92, where he took 19% of the vote. And after he had already walked away, that's why Bill Clinton won. Mm-hmm. So you look in 2020 and somebody runs as an independent, you could get to a point where neither of the candidates get 270, 71 electoral votes. So the bottom line is, watch the independents. I think they're going to be in some winning, but also upsetting the traditional process and the status quo. And you know what? If something's upsetting the traditional process and the status quo, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I also think that there should be also another approach, which is people remember, we need to remember that we have processes outside of voting. Like, before we even get to the voting stage, we should be discussing how to break down those walls and the barriers to having a more just process. Like, I don't understand. The Green Party and the Libertarian parties are extremely large. What, third and fourth largest parties in the country? Why the hell do they need ballot signatures when it's time to run?
Right.
There's no reason for that whatsoever. There's literally no. You could have said at one point, maybe you didn't take them seriously as a party. How long has the Green Party been around now?
Oh, wow. Before, 10 years, maybe more than that.
More than that, yeah. And they have millions of people registered for the party. Why do I have a different process than a Republican or a Democrat? I had to, because that's money, resources, and time. And time is, of course, at that point, the most valuable of your assets that you have to spend getting signatures, which is good because it allows you to campaign a little bit. But most of the signatures are coming from people who are already going to vote for you.
Right.
So it doesn't really help. You need the time to campaign. You need the money that you will invest in people going on getting signatures for you, into campaigning and ads and things like that, and tools and information that you need to get. So we need to also address that substantively, and we need to do it soon, and it needs to be before, because if we try to do anything during an election, they're going to think it's political games, and
Well,
nothing's
we
going to
already
get done.
saw what happened in New York. Once you get close to the election, you start getting close to the election and you start realizing, like in New York, well, wait a minute. They said that in order to change your status, so registration status, in order to vote for Bernie, all the people who want to vote for Bernie, they would have had to do it last October before they even knew.
Yeah, like 6
So when
months
you
in
get close,
advance.
you realize they already got it set up.
Yep.
So you are right in that you have to start today looking at the process, looking at the hurdles that they've set up, deliberate hurdles that they've set up to ensure that anybody that's not one of those two chosen parties can't get through this huge firewall of rules and regulations that they've got. You're right. We need to start looking at that now and trying to tear down that wall that they have to keep everybody else outside. Because when it gets to the last minute, it's too late.
Yep. So before we finish up, man, do you have any advice? Because you've been doing this for quite a while, much longer than I have. Do you have any advice for anybody who wants to get into journalism of any kind, whether it be writing, radio show, YouTube? What advice would you have for somebody who's getting started?
Okay, here's the advice that I would have for anybody who's getting started. And it's the same advice that I have for people who just want to know. Research. That's what I would say. Don't take the mainstream premise, what I call, the AP, the Associated Press, I call it the approved premise. Don't say it's all wrong, but research. And I don't say don't read the Washington Post or the New York Times. Read them, because I picked up a lot of stuff from there, mostly bad or things I could attack.
Yeah, I need to. Yeah, you have to read that.
Right, but read everything. Read RT, read Al Jazeera, read BBC. The best thing you can do is you can research, you can go to YouTube, you can find economists, you can go to the Real News, places like that. You can find books when you go to Real News, or you go online and you find maybe a Robert Wolf or somebody, and you say, wow, this guy's great, and they got a book. Research. Knowledge is what it's all about. That will free you from the bonds of the approved premise.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I did a video essentially telling people how to get into progressive journalism, because I feel like we need more. We need much, much more going into 2018 and 2020. And now literally I said, I don't care, whatever you do, you need to read, and read some more. And it's not just about the current events. You need to understand the history of, how things came to be. You need to understand the philosophy behind certain types of government and how they've become corrupted. I'll have a conversation with anybody who wants to talk about the differences of, they want to use communism or socialists as a ad hominem attack. And I'm like, well, what do you think a socialist is? And they're like, well, they get some crazy explanation. I'm like, well, it's surrounded by the labor movement. In fact, I would say that our government has been pretty socialist for quite a long time. At least that's how it's been in certain states. So like New York, for example, is generally, for the most part, a socialist movement, because a lot of the productivity is controlled and funneled through the worker. And that's what it's mostly about. And it's supposed to have a dab of capitalism. Now, of course, I would only know that if I read.
Right.
And then in reading that type of stuff can help you formulate arguments and things like that in the future. And you'd be surprised what education can do for a mind. I wasn't always left-leaning, I guess. I was a libertarian, so I was social liberal, but I would say I was libertarian because I did debate in high school. And when you are young and you have all the statistics, you think you know everything. You know what I'm talking about. So, but as I read and talked to more people and listened to more perspectives, that's whenever I started to like, okay, so there's always a cause to any effect. Things don't just happen for no reason. And that's, I think, is important when you're trying to grow into a well-rounded and just and objective journalist. So
that's right. The revolution starts in the library, not in the streets.
Amen.
And now with YouTube, I think that you can learn a lot on YouTube.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so revolution starts library, YouTube, then maybe streets.
There we go.
If the other two don't work out. Hey, the Eastern Europe, they like to say Ronald Reagan was the one who freed Soviet Russia. Or the Eastern European countries involved Soviet Russia. It was intelligentsia people.
Yes, it was.
People who read and reported and educated. So don't forget that. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I greatly appreciate it. I can't wait to have. I'm gonna try to get Lee to come on too. Hopefully, I can get both of you all on. Y'all can yell back and forth at each other.
Sounds good. And make sure I'll get the producer in touch with you. We want to get you back on our show this week.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let's do it, man. Let's do it. And thank you all so much for tuning in. As usual, and always remember, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance. Peace.